Lubach from the Ombuds office at UCSB. And boy, am I excited to spend some time with Professor Tania Israel. I will shortly be introducing you to the professor, and we'll be talking about her brand new book called Beyond Your Bubble. But I wanted to let you know a couple things about Tania Israel before we got started. So in addition to writing this book, she's has quite a list of accomplishments. She's a professor of counseling psychology at UCSB. She's a researcher, an educator, and a fellow from the American Psychological Association. Dr. Israel's book, Beyond Your Bubble, How to Connect Across the Political Divide, Skills and Strategies for Conversations That Work, draws on the professor's experience facilitating educational programs and difficult dialogues around topics like abortion, law enforcement, religion, sexual orientation, and other topics to prepare people to engage in dialogue across political lines. You can find out more about Tania Israel on her website, taniaisrael.com. I was just looking at it a minute ago. It also contains links to the famous dialogue flowchart that we'll talk about during our time together. So without further ado, I am happy to introduce you to Professor Tania Israel. At last, I'm here with Tania Israel, a longtime friend, so this interview is not going to be this very formal sort of thing. I'm catching up with the professor as well as sharing her work with you. I'm so glad that we're together, Tania. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Don. It is wonderful to see you. I miss running into you on campus, and it's so great to have some time with you today.
Yeah. So you wrote a book, and that's why we're getting together. And it seems like a minute ago for me, I was at some sort of function, and you said, "I have all these notes. I'm thinking about these bubbles that we're all in, and I think I'm gonna write a book." And with COVID and everything, it seems like that was 4 minutes ago, and here you are, touring and going on podcasts and so forth. So, tell me about that, and I'd love to know also all of your scholarly work, and I'll put your potted bio in ahead of our time together so folks will know, but this is different territory for a research professor. So yeah, tell me about this.
Okay, well, yes, most of my research is on interventions to support LGBT people and communities, and I've been doing that work for over 20 years now. And that has been very rewarding, and I feel really good about all of that. But then this opportunity came up because after the 2016 election, it was really obvious that our country was so divided, and people were saying, we need to do something about this. We should be having conversations, but nobody was saying how to do that. And I have been teaching helping skills for a long time, and I've also been involved in facilitating difficult dialogues around abortion and law enforcement and LGBT issues and religion. And I thought, maybe I have something to offer here. So I'm all about creating things. Like, I'm about creating interventions. I want to do something to help. So I made the thing that I thought, this is going to solve everything. And I called it the flow chart that will resolve all political conflict in our country.
Excellent.
Because I'm very optimistic that way.
Right.
But part of it was really trying to help people be more intentional about, like, is this what you're trying to do? Then, okay, then try to do these things instead of these things. So it's kind of walking people through stuff. But spoiler alert, the flowchart did not actually resolve all political conflict in our country.
Yes. I'll put a link to the chart in, though. It is an excellent flow chart. And I love, it kind of gave me a little window to your brain. It's like how you put things together with shapes and so forth. And that was a great outline.
Yes, it turns out I am not, a graphic artist. So it is like Tania making like shapes on Microsoft Word and making text boxes. So in the book, it's much better because it turns out that my publisher actually knows how to create things like that. So what happened was that the flow chart wasn't quite enough. So I went on to create this 2-hour workshop, like a skills building workshop on how to have dialogue across political lines. So really, how do you develop those skills in listening and in managing your emotions? And how do you learn to take somebody else's perspective? And that was great. And several hundred people, mostly in Santa Barbara County, went through that workshop, and some people on campus, some students, some staff. And then that still wasn't quite enough. It seemed like there might be something more that I could do from this. And so that's when I decided to write the book. And, what you might remember is that I was really excited about writing this book, but in all of the work that I've done, I've never written a book before. I've got lots of peer-reviewed journal articles, as any good researcher in my field is going to have, but I'm not in a book field. I'm in an article field. And so writing books is not a thing for us. And plus, I wanted to write a book that wasn't an academic book. I wanted to write a book that was going to reach the general public. And so that was a totally new venture. And I really, didn't quite know how to start. So what I did is I recorded myself delivering the workshop and some other talks about this topic. And I'm going to do a little promo. Not really, they're not paying me anything, but there's this app called Temi, T-E-M-I, and it's a digital transcription app. Right. And I uploaded this 2-hour audio file, and I got a transcript of it back in 11 minutes.
Wow. So this was not done by humans. This was done by a smart computer somewhere.
Absolutely. And it's got a really good editing interface. So I took that, and then I organized it into chapters and subchapters, because I had a really clear idea in my mind, because I had done the workshop and I knew how people responded and how, the order things needed to go in. And then when I needed to write the book, I would just go into a document and I would already have stuff there that I could start from. So I never had to start with a blank page.
Excellent. And you went with your strengths. I love when people lead with their strengths. And I have had the great fortune of observing you lecture before. You're a great teacher. And would you be willing to give us a quick teaching demo in that you're really talking about dialogue, and dialogue's different from debate. It's different from discourse. Would you educate us about what is dialogue compared to its brothers and sisters?
Sure. I think it's important that we think about what kinds of conversations are we talking about here. And often when people are imagining these conversations, they're thinking about what they see on TV. When they have people who are spokespeople for the different sides and they're arguing and it's getting really heated. That's not what we're talking about here. And even if you lower the volume and the emotion on that, it's not even about debate. So in a debate, people are trying to win the argument. They're trying to, have the best argument that's going to convince, whoever, the judges maybe, or the other person. And we're not talking about that either. We're not talking about something where somebody's trying to win. And we're certainly not talking about diatribe, which is just somebody venting out all of what they want to say. Right. It's really about people who want to be in dialogue with somebody else, in conversation with somebody else, being able to understand where the other person's coming from. So cultivating understanding. And that I hear from people like, so why would you do that? Like, what's the goal if you're not actually going to win? So it turns out there's other goals you can have. And when I ask people about why did they come to the workshop, for example, I heard the same things very consistently. I have somebody in my life who I'm close to, but we have different political views, but I want to maintain the relationship, a family member, a friend from high school or something. People would say, I just can't understand why people think the way they do or vote the way they do. And so they wanted to understand more. Some people say, that they're really distressed about the political divide, and so they want to do something about it. And some people really want to find common ground. And of course, some people do want to persuade other people it turns out if you want to persuade other people, you have to understand them first.
How about
So
that?
for any of those goals, that conversation that promotes understanding is going to be really essential.
Right. And I just wanted to mention for those who have not had a chance to get the book yet that it's very, very tactical. There's even telephone scripts. I was so amazed. It's like you could call your uncle who you're nervous about sitting with at an upcoming family gathering. Hopefully we'll have those again soon. And you give a script on how I hope we can have a good conversation. And are you willing to do that? So I love how absolutely tactical it is. Are you getting feedback so far as folks who have either attended one of your workshops before the book, and how is this stuff working out there? What are you hearing back from your new students that go way beyond the university now?
So one of the great things that I'm hearing from people is that just reading the book is helping to reduce their stress. And this is one of the things, I'm a psychologist, so I'm concerned about people's stress. And it turns out that people have been under greater stress because of the political divisiveness in our country. And so if all I do is help people to feel less distressed about the idea of having a conversation, that's a win as far as I'm concerned. But people are also, I think, starting to venture into some of these conversations. And I've put up a survey on my website so that people can give me this feedback. So I put this up, and I'm hoping that people will do this. The book just came out, so it hasn't happened yet. But even with the workshop, as I would talk to people who had attended the workshop, it's a small enough community. I would run into people who had come, or people would reach out to me, and people were trying then to have these conversations to reach across the divide, and they would tell me about things that were working well. But the other thing that I hear is it's not always going to be perfect and successful and smooth the first time you do it. So I think it's important to have realistic expectations. And that's part of why I wrote the book, because I was like, oh, I need to expand more on this and give people opportunity to reflect and to practice before they try to do these things that are so hard, or if they're meeting challenges, to have a resource they can go back to continue to support them.
Can we talk about our bubble for a minute? I forget how insulated our giant, it feels like a big open place, the university. But when I go even, 100 miles away and start talking with folks, I might drop my preferred gender pronouns or something like that. And people look at me like I am from the moon. How could we who are in university circles sort of keep a more open mind, or, what advice do you have for your peers on the campus to be good communicators when we're not on the moon?
That is a great question, and I think it's useful in terms of thinking about when we go off the campus, but also just when we're having conversations with each other.
Right.
I think that the skills that are useful for dialogue across political lines are also really useful for even dialogue with people who we think we agree with, because it turns out that we can always kind of deepen our understanding of ourselves and other people. So I've been having conversations with people lately who are like on my side, right, where I just ask them more questions. I'm like, oh, how did you get there in your thinking? Or what kinds of experiences did you have that led you there? And I'm learning all kinds of things. And people are telling me, oh, I feel like I got some new insights about myself from this conversation. So I want to encourage, doing this both within as well as outside. But I think one of the main things, and this relates to that, is first of all, not assuming that everybody is the same as us on any level, in terms of, we think about that sometimes in terms of diversity of our identities. But there's also diversity of thinking and of experiences. And we don't always take the time to get to know what somebody's experiences and thinking are like. And the other piece, and this isn't a skill as much as I would say an attitude, is curiosity. I think that, and you are one of the most curious people I know. I feel like you are always wanting to learn. You always want to know about people and research and what's going on. And that is such a great quality, because the more curious we are, then I think that if somebody feels that from us, that we really want to know about them, that helps to build that relationship that can help us to have those difficult conversations.
Yeah, excellent. Maybe this is a sequel to your book, is Conversations Within the Bubble. So you got cross bubbles, within bubbles. It's going to be endless. It's amazing. Excellent. So what is your, going forward with your year, with everything changing and so forth, and this book seeming to really be picking up steam? Every time I have a little UCSB feed and I keep seeing your name popping up. Will you go on a speaking tour? What do you hope for the year ahead?
That's a great question. It's certainly, nothing is the way we thought it was going to be, right, with the pandemic. So my speaking tour is like, I go from my dining room to my living room, and I've been doing a lot of interviews, which is great, and people are contacting me about doing speaking and things, but it's all distanced, right now, which I'm really glad that I'm able to do that. I'm actually developing an online version of the workshop. So I participated in this great institute at UCSB this summer. 140 faculty participated in this institute on online instruction. And it was fantastic. And it also gave me a lot of tools to think about, how can I translate some of what I'm doing with dialogue across political lines into something that people can access? And so it's funny because we are more limited in some ways, but I feel like our reach is actually broader in some ways, which is great. So I'll be able to do the online version of the workshop. People are asking me about speaking and conferences and things like that. I miss the idea of going and being in different communities doing this, because I do think that there's something about where you are geographically that helps to understand people's experiences and their beliefs and their politics. I grew up in Charlottesville, Virginia, which is on everybody's radar as a place of political conflict now. But when I was growing up there, it was a southern college town, but in the middle of Virginia. And so I grew up in this academic family, but in the middle of this this diverse community with one public high school that we all went to. And so I feel like that gave me a view of the world and an understanding of things and a desire to, an ability to maybe relate to people who are different from myself. So this is a little off topic, I realize, from your question, but I want to go to where people live and be able to do this work. And so it's great that I can reach out and I can do this, and I look forward to doing more of that. But I also look forward to the pandemic being over for a whole laundry list of reasons. But one of them is I hope then I'll be able to travel and go do this work with people in their more local environments.
Yeah. I want to kit you out with one of those hazmat suits and a breather and stuff and just send you into the communities. You could be this sort of walking healer. Well, so good to get caught up and to hear about this exciting adventure that you have sent yourself on. And I'm looking forward to sharing this information with fellow Ombuds from across the UC and across the country, and also our colleagues across the campus, because we don't always listen to and pay attention to what everybody's up to on campus and scattered around right now too. So I think folks are going to be happy to hear this update and hear about you. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Don. This has been great.